Hello everyone. A political storm has just unfolded in Australia, more real and more ironic than a Netflix drama. This storm was triggered by one email and a mistake. When responding to a media inquiry, the Australian Treasury accidentally sent out a confidential document, complete with its most sensitive title unedited. The title of this document clearly exposed a series of unspeakable truths about the government in black and white, including the target of 1.2 million homes will not be met. In order for the government to achieve a sustainable fiscal budget, it must increase taxes and reduce spending. Although this leaked document did not clearly state that new taxes will be introduced, it suggested starting with increases in indirect taxes such as GST, stamp duty, and land tax. The email was already sent, and in the face of this political disaster, Australian Treasurer Jim Chalmers appeared on camera and tried to downplay it with a light-hearted.
I'm pretty relaxed about it.
The treasurer might feel relaxed, but for those of us, investors putting in real money, the situation is far from relaxed. Does this government officially certified supply shortage mean that housing prices will have unlimited room to grow? And will the planned increases in GST, stamp duty, and land tax eventually be passed on to investors, eating into our returns? This is not just a simple political scandal. It is an extremely clear market signal. This truth-telling document tells us Australia's housing supply shortage is not a short-term fluctuation, but a structural abyss. For first-home buyers, this abyss is a crisis, but for investors, with strength and capital, it could be a once-in-a-lifetime golden investment opportunity. Today, I will tear away the official facade and dissect this leaked document point by point, using the most accurate data to analyze how large is the supply gap really? How strong is the momentum behind future housing price increases? If a tax reform is implemented, which taxes will be the most damaging? And how should we, as investors, defend ourselves? And most importantly, how should investors prepare and protect themselves? Will this leak scandal rewrite the rules of Australia's property market for the next decade? Let's dive deep into the data and unpack what it really means for you and your investment strategy. Why was a top-secret document from the Treasury exposed? Let's reconstruct this discovery process, which is no less thrilling than a detective novel. It all began when a business reporter from ABC News submitted a media inquiry to the Treasury on May 14, requesting access to the new government briefing prepared for Treasurer Jim Chalmers. 2 weeks later, the reporter received a 111-page response, but the document was basically empty, containing only basic information about the governor of the Reserve Bank. But then, the plot thickened. On June 11, the reporter received an email from the Treasury admitting that they had sent the wrong document. This version sent contains confidential information. We sincerely apologize for this oversight. The very next day, the reporter received an even more urgent email. Please confirm by the end of the day that you have deleted the earlier version of the document and that you will not report on or reproduce its contents. The more the Treasury urgently requested a deletion, the more curious the reporter became. The reporter conducted a thorough search through the emails and finally uncovered the content the Treasury was so worried about. It turned out that the first version of the document sent on May 30 included a complete table of contents exposing the confidential briefings prepared for Treasurer Jim Chalmers and Housing Minister Claire O'Neill. Faced with political disaster, the Treasurer Jim Chalmers responded to the media by saying, "I'm pretty relaxed." He then defended the situation, saying, "The document was mistakenly sent by Treasury officials, but the contents are consistent with my public remarks." But if the information is really suitable for public release, why was the Treasury so desperate to have ABC News delete the document? The answer is simple. These are truths the government doesn't want you to know. The most shocking revelation in the leaked document is that the Treasury explicitly admitted the ambitious goal of building 1.2 million new homes by 2029 will not be met. This news is nothing short of a bombshell. One of the Labour government's core election promises has been directly negated by its own Treasury Department. Although the leaked confidential document does not go into detail as to why the 1.2 million housing target is an empty promise, the current housing construction pace already speaks volumes. According to Broker Daily, based on industry estimates at the current pace, the final total will fall short by 20%. Rising construction costs, skilled labor shortages, and complex development approval processes are all severely impacting housing supply. According to the latest Australian Bureau of Statistics data, only 15,212 dwellings were approved, seasonally adjusted, nationwide in May 2025. To meet the 1.2 million home targeted by 2029, 240,000 homes need to be built per year. But at the current rate, HIA Economics notes that only about 180,000 homes are being built annually. The National Housing Supply and Affordability Council, or NHSAC, provided an even more alarming forecast. Only 938,000 homes are expected to be completed during the 5-year period from 2024 to 2029, leaving a 262,000 home shortfall from the original 1.2 million target. The construction industry is facing a severe labor shortage, making it extremely difficult to speed up building activity. According to the latest data, Australia needs an additional 90,000 workers in the construction sector to reach the quarterly goal of 60,000 homes. Aside from the slow construction speed, construction costs are continuously rising. According to the ABS Producer Price Index, or PPI, from September 2020 to June 2024, residential construction costs have increased by cumulative 31.1%. The leaked document also revealed another unspeakable secret. Tax should be raised as part of broader tax reform. The Treasury believes that in order to achieve a sustainable budget, it is necessary to find additional revenue and spending cuts. Although the document did not specifically state which taxes will be increased, it shows that the Treasury has considered indirect taxes such as the goods and service tax, stamp duty, land tax, as well as the superannuation tax, and leans towards reducing corporate and personal income tax. Regarding whether GST should be increased, the government has taken a cautious stance, stating it is open to hearing suggestions at the August tax reform roundtable. Currently, the GST rate in Australia is 10%, but it is highly likely to increase to 12.5%. Although this confidential document does not mention removing negative gearing or capital gains tax concessions for property investors, any increase in GST, stamp duty, or land tax will directly affect the cost of purchasing and holding investment properties. Increasing GST will directly raise the cost of living, and also increase the cost of buying new properties. However, the leaked document also notes that the government intends to reduce personal and corporate income taxes, suggesting a balance between tax hikes and tax cuts. If investors are considering purchasing Australian property, they should enter the market as soon as possible before tax increases take effect, to avoid paying higher GST and stamp duty. Each Australian state has different stamp duty rates and foreign buyers surcharges. For example, for a property worth $1 million in New South Wales, the local stamp duty is 4% and the foreign buyer surcharge is 9%, totaling 13%. If you wish to save on a foreign buyer surcharge, you can consider investing in the Australian Capital Territory or ACT, Canberra, which does not impose a foreign buyer surcharge. Even the additional land tax for foreign buyers is only 0.75%. There's another way to reduce stamp duty. Since a house and land package only requires stamp duty on the land portion and not the construction portion, while already built detached houses, apartments, and townhouses require stamp duty on the entire purchase price, I've always recommended buying house and land packages to save a significant amount on stamp duty. If you're interested, please refer to my previous video. If the government increases land tax, there are still legal ways to reduce it. As I've introduced before, interstate investment is a strategy worth considering. Each Australian state has different land tax exemption thresholds, so by diversifying investment across states, you can buy properties below the exemption threshold in each state. For example, in Queensland, the land tax exemption threshold is $600,000. If you're interested, please check my previous video on interstate investment. In addition to indirect taxes, the government also plans to increase the tax rate on superannuation accounts exceeding $3 million from 15% to 30%. Even more controversial is the introduction of a tax of unrealized capital gains. This means for properties or other assets held in an SMSF, self-managed super fund, even if they are not sold, as long as the asset has increased in value, you'll still be taxed on the paper gains as income. This could have major implications for investors who buy real estate through their super. If their super is tied up in property and they don't have enough cash to pay for the tax, they may even need to sell the property just to pay the tax. Just as Australia is dealing with its internal leak scandal, external pressure is also mounting. On July 12, Trump announced a 30% tariff on the EU and Mexico, effective August 1. Although Australia currently faces a mere 10% tariff, Trump has already imposed a 10% tariff and warned that any retaliation will lead to further increases. A more serious threat comes from the potential decline of the US dollar as the global reserve currency. The Treasury in the leaked document simulated the potential impact on the Australian economy if global confidence in the USD falters. From the recent rebound of the AUD against the USD, we can already observe this weakening trend. In April, the AUD hit a year low of 0.5955 USD, but gradually recovered to reach 0.6592 USD on July 10, trading around 0.6567 USD on July 14. If the US economy continues to experience turmoil and the USD stays weak, the AUD is expected to rise moderately. Several Australian banks forecast the AUD-USD exchange rate to increase from the current 0.65 to around 0.73 in the coming year. Given the current exchange rate, buyers holding HKD or RMB can effectively purchase quality Australian assets at a discount, and once the AUD rebounds, they may also gain from additional exchange rate profits. The leak storm, staged by the Australian Treasury this time, has sounded a major alarm for investors. The government's goal of building 1.2 million homes in the next 5 years is simply unachievable, even a political empty promise. The signal of a severe supply shortage in the property market has now been officially confirmed, pouring fuel on an already overheated housing market. Life is like a drama. Every data point, every news headline is a foreshadowing of the Australian property market over the next decade. This leak storm may cause some to panic in the short term, but for clear-eyed and capable investors, it has revealed a new direction for capital deployment. As for looming threats of tax hikes, how should capital be positioned to preserve wealth and capture growth? The key lies in choosing the right state and property type. Even if taxes rise, there are legal strategies to save on tax. Winners have always been those who can see through appearances, plan strategically, and find opportunities in crisis. Clear-headed, calm deployment is the key to winning in the wake of this leak storm. Alright, that's all for today's episode. See you next time.